My name is Carol Off. I'm the host of CBC Radio's national evening program, As It Happens. Thank you. A show that launched 50 years ago this fall. So there's a success story. Over the course of my life and my career, I've measured out success in many ways, as all of you have. We tend to see it in the eyes of others, don't we? When you're a public person in the media, you can seek out and get a lot of recognition, and you can allow yourself to believe that it's a measure of your success. I recently published a book that was nominated for a number of awards. I can't tell you how nervous an author is as they await the news if they've made the shortlist for a prize. There was a day when I saw that I had a phone message from Vancouver, where I was hoping to be on the shortlist for the BC National Book Award. Coincidentally, I also had a phone message from an investigative reporter in Ottawa who covers crime. I had no idea why he would be calling me, but I knew instinctively to avoid it. And that's a little tip from me. If an investigative reporter calls, it can never be a good thing. So I called what I thought was the BC number, and a man on the line told me, breathlessly, that he was just calling to say that I was on the list. But he wanted to reassure me that I was on the long list and not the short list. Somehow this was supposed to be good news. I sounded disappointed. The man said, "But why would you want to be on the short list of a serial killer?" Okay, so as it turns out, I had misdialed. And I'd called the investigative reporter, who was covering the trial of Ian Bush, a crazed murderer who would duct tape the mouths shut of his victims and watch them squirm and die. The police had just released to reporters a list that Bush had crafted of those he planned to kill, had he not been caught. The reporter said, "Well, the good news is that you were just on the long list. The bad news is that you were number one on the long list." And the extra bad news is that, well, he'd already killed everyone on the short list. But he said the really good news is that he's going to prison for a long time. So I thanked the reporter and I hung up and I called the other number. And a breathless voice said, "Congratulations, you're on the short list." So the moral of the story, be careful what success you wish for in life. Success is a key theme of As It Happens, and so I've become a keen observer of what people try to do and what they succeed to do in life. Just recently, I spoke with a young woman in Afghanistan who was in a 2018 graduating class of a university in Kabul. If the Taliban had been successful, she would not have graduated because she would have been dead. Gunmen had stormed into her campus in 2016 and shot people at random simply because they were students. Breshna Musasai pretended to be dead. She lay very still while her lifeblood left her from bullet wounds in her leg and her foot. She survived. She went back to classes in a wheelchair, and then she graduated. Another story, an Ottawa resident, John Dickout, 55 years old, ran a 10K race for the first time in his life last year. He told me the story of how close he once came to perishing from heart disease. But a young man who had died of a seizure at the age of 22 had donated his heart. John became the recipient. John managed to meet the donor's family, and he learned about the extraordinary fellow whose heart was now beating in his chest. He wanted to do them proud. The donor's parents were there at the finishing line, cheering him on as he ran past. And as he told me this story, I have to say that's one of the many times that I shed tears during an interview. We knew of 2 men from Iran, refugees who were living in Turkey, hoping to find somewhere in the world to go. They are gay. They had suffered so much trauma, their only chance of survival was to be together. But the Turkish government registered them in different cities and wouldn't allow them to be with each other. Their pain was palpable as we spoke. I was so touched by their trust in me and their candor. And it seems the many people who heard the interview felt the same way, including the Canadian government. Heaven and earth moved, and the 2 men were just recently granted asylum here, as was their dream, and they plan now to get married in Canada. As It Happens covers the widest range of human experience imaginable, from the profound to the profane. I'm always in awe of those people who dedicate enormous parts of their lives to getting into the Guinness World Book of Records as a form of success. This week we learned of a man in Quebec who spent 6 years developing the world's largest tourtière. Think of it, 6 years. And in the end, we didn't do the interview because he was so boring that we almost went to sleep. His life dream, his accomplishment, was just so tedious. I once talked to a very excited young man who had just broken the record for the highest number of fist pumps delivered without stopping. He had to glue his fist together to accomplish the last 24 hours. Success story. I just the other day talked to the daughter of a man who passed away after a long career of fooling people with the most elaborate hoaxes imaginable, including having once convinced the New York Times that he had died and getting that revered paper, respected for getting its facts right, to write his obituary. He was so proud of that. He was actually on As It Happens once, as we discovered, in 1975, when Barbara Frum was fooled by his campaign to insist that all domestic animals be required to cover their private parts with clothing. And we did that interview. He successfully sucked us in. All of these people glow with their success, and I marvel at the courage of some, and I shake my head wondering about the energy expended on foolishness of others. The people whom I respect the most, the people I believe who are most successful, often don't even acknowledge that they have accomplished anything. The woman I spoke with who ran towards the gunfire in Las Vegas in order to help those who were wounded, she held the hand of a stranger, a Canadian, as it turns out, while he died. There was the refugee who climbed the outside wall of a 3-story apartment building in order to save a small child who was about to fall. There was a bystander who waded into freezing, fast-moving water to free someone from a sinking car. I have spoken with doctors who defy death so they can treat bomb victims in Syria, a villager who led his neighbors away from advancing warlords, students who bravely face down police as they go into the streets to protest against their authoritarian governments. These are the achievements that matter the most to me. I take the words of Dr. Viktor Frankl, who wrote that success is a quality that is naturally occurring in a life dedicated to something larger than oneself. When I tell people they are heroes, or that I admire their courage, or that they have done something extraordinary, they always dismiss that idea. I think they know that it's true, but they're also aware that it doesn't matter. That's not why they acted. It was simply the right thing to do. You cannot pursue success or chase after it, but But you will find success, like happiness, if you act selflessly, if you dedicate your life to something larger than you. And I think that is what I admire and aspire to the most in the people who have truly acquired success. Thank you.